Hey guys, welcome to Biker Protocol. I'm Hollywood from Black Patch MC here in Las Vegas, and we got.
I'm Picasso, president of Eagle Riders MC here in Las Vegas.
What do you think about prospecting? How important is prospecting?
It is beyond important.
Yeah.
When we first started our MC, we had a certain period of time and we had a certain protocol for how we prospected people, and we realized it was too short.
Mm-hmm.
And then we extended that time out, and then we realized that was too short. And so, we prospect for a pretty considerable amount of time. And we started learning from a lot of 1% clubs of how they do it. And it was like, we're kind of into that territory, and it's like, oh yeah, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
It totally makes a difference.
So going back then, what's before prospecting? Hang around period, right?
Right, hang around. So every club's different on how they find people, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk in another video about how to get hang-arounds, right?
Yeah.
But there's different websites you can use. There's Facebook. There's a whole bunch of different places you can find hang-arounds. A lot of it just comes from going out and participating in activities and events.
It's the club hanging around to get hang-arounds.
Right, it's true, right?
Right? Or
So, but the first phase of this whole thing is to become a hang-around
Yeah.
of another club, and that's an actual term. But that's kind of where it all starts. Because what happens is I get emails from time to time on our website,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Hey, I've read through your website and I want to join your club." It's like, yeah, let's pump the brakes on that a little bit because we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here.
I've gotten a few of those emails. I just say, well, that's not the way you're supposed to do it.
Right. That's
Just
exactly
literally straight up. Let's take it back a few steps. You know? But yeah, so hang-arounds, the phases of joining the club. So hang around, you hang around. You find a club that you like, maybe you're interested, and you hang around them, right? So where do we go from there?
Well, I mean, and even to elaborate on that a little bit, sometimes hang-arounds come because they met a member of a club that they like or know, right? And they're invited. Hey, come ride with us sometime, right? That happens. Sometimes it's just simply a matter of we got hang-arounds. We actually have members in our club that we found at a gas station. So like seriously, like we bump it. So we were coming back from a ride one time, and we met a couple, and at a gas station, we're gassing up with them, and then like later on that day, like hours and hours later, at like 3 more gas stops later, we bumped into the same couple again.
Really?
And so we start talking to them, and we're like, well, we have business cards.
Yeah.
I don't know if I got one.
I think most clubs do.
Most clubs do, right?
And a fun fact, and I don't know, I couldn't say this is maybe not so much of a fact, but back in the day, they were, and now it just went out of my head. It's going to come back to me.
No, that's all right.
They're business cards, but they were.
I'm digging in my cup.
Yeah, while he's digging, I'm going to think and dig in my brain.
This is my challenge coin. We're going to get into those later.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
Why can't I think of it?
I know I got some on me. This is like so embarrassing.
Why can't?
So our
Is there
business
internet in here? I need to look this up.
Our business cards for our club are actually poker chips because we're Vegas.
Oh, that's cool.
So we
Yeah,
actually
that's
have
really
poker
cool.
chips made. I've seen a couple other clubs do that too. I don't have them on me. They're on my bike. But we do poker chips. So we give out poker chips to new hang-arounds or anybody that's interested in joining. Yeah, it's not my color. But but that's what we do. So and it's cool and it's interesting. So we give those out.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost much, and so. We give poker chips, and so we gave them one, and then they started joining us on rides, and a year later, then we got a new member, right?
Yeah. So way to get your information on this, so they know where you're riding and where to come hang out and meet up with you guys.
Right. And we're going to do a whole video. We actually have a clubhouse. We're going to do a whole video on where you can meet up and commonalities and all that, because there's a lot of ways to do that too, which are really helpful for clubs. Because you don't have to have a clubhouse to have a common place where you can meet and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah. So when people are just interested in learning, maybe they don't even know anything about the club life. Maybe they're just interested in your club for whatever reason. You become a hang-around. And the hang-arounds are just basically, it's non-committal. It's just they're learning. You're learning a little bit about them. And as you become familiar, and different clubs have different time periods even on hang-around processes before they start looking at them as prospecting. I know some clubs that are like, you have to do 10 rides with us before we'll have the conversation of being a prospect, things like that. There's different ways you can do that.
I always equate hang around as like what you were saying, touching on, it's a non-committal thing. So you don't have to do a damn thing with us. You don't have to listen to us. I mean, obviously there's the respect issue. You just got to be nice. But it's your chance to look at us and interview us essentially.
Right.
Like, is this a club you want to be a part of? Because then when it gets to the prospecting, now it's, is this a person, a member we want?
Right.
And so now you're committed to something, and now we're looking at you. Whereas as a hang-around, you're just like a buddy hanging out.
Right.
And, feel it out, see how we interact, how we carry ourselves as a club. And I think that's a super important part, even before prospecting.
Yeah, I agree. And if you're going to be hanging around a club, it's a good time to ask questions.
Yeah,
you may not
definitely.
always get answers because sometimes the questions you ask might be club specific, or there's policies certainly amongst MCs, not so much with RCs. RCs are going to be a more open book, but with MCs there are it's usually a strict protocol. We don't talk about club business to anybody,
of course,
other than club members, right? So there might be questions you ask of things that might be club business, and they're going to flat out tell you, well, we're not going to answer that.
Yeah.
And even as a prospect, you may not know that. There are some of those types of inner working things like finances and things like that, how a club works. Whereas a prospect, you may not even know.
Yeah, we have a hang around right now, and we were talking about this before. He's very green, and it's a good way. And we told him, like, ask your questions, and he's like, well, I'm not sure like what clubs are, and MCs and riding and rules and positions and all that stuff.
Sure.
Just ask. That's your time. And like you said, if it's going to be something that we can't answer, we'll answer that maybe at a later date, or join and we'll see, or whatever. But that's your time to interview us, interview the club that you're joining, and then going on to prospecting. That's the next step, right?
Right. Well, and understand too is that a hang around for an RC for Riders Club is going to be a little different than hanging around a motorcycle club.
I mean,
right? Hang-arounds at an RC, usually it's like, hi, you've joined us for your first ride here. Would you like some patches? It's going to be a little more like that, right?
Yeah, and we laugh about it, but it's not. We're not.
Not trying to diss RCs at all.
I guess there's fun in it, but not. You know what I mean. But
no, but like with an RC, it's going to be a little bit more formal, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of the difference, and we do have videos we're making different. We just don't. Our video we did already on RC versus MC.
Yeah.
We talk about this a little bit. But yeah, so after that kind of honeymoon phase, I don't even call it the honeymoon phase. It's more like the dating phase,
Which
right?
one? The prospecting?
For hanging around.
Oh, hanging around, yeah.
So so once you've made a commitment to joining a club, or you think it's really right for you, and you talk to the officers and you ask the questions of, well, I've been hanging around with you guys for a while. What's the next step? Now, I do know some clubs. I've heard this from some clubs where they've had hang-arounds for a considerable amount of time.
Oh yeah, we have hang-arounds that they're just. I mean, it's not maybe because we've chosen, but they just want to hang around with us, and they've been hanging around us for years.
We have a guy. We just went on a ride the other day. We have a guy who's been hanging around us for, God, at least 3 years. I mean, and he doesn't want to join any club. He's just like, and I just
support.
And he likes us. We see him all the time. A nice guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just don't feel the need to join the club, and it's like, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And it's still cool. You learn a lot about them. They almost, I wouldn't say become a member, but you know enough about them because they've been around so long that you can hang out with them and have no problems with them and ride with them and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it's just, but again, because we're an MC, joining our club is again, it's kind of gets into that family thing.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't feel comfortable getting into that level of it, that's fine.
Yeah.
There's no problem with that. I'd rather we weed that out early rather than have to deal with that later on. Right? So.
And so while we're on, before we move on to the further part in the process, why prospecting is kind of important. We're kind of, is more of the framework, I guess, but I think it's still a good idea to touch on why it's important.
Sure.
And so the hang around is the interview process of the club that you're joining, I guess, and then the prospecting is the interview of the club on you.
Right.
And so it's almost like the way I agree, say it was hang around, you can leave anytime, right? It's no commitment. Prospect, there's a little bit of commitment. And then it's also different for different clubs. There's a little bit more stricter to prospecting, but you can still leave in a way. Members, you can leave, of course. Again, different clubs, different stories, but it's not as fun or not as I don't know how you put it, good to leave once you get a member. Like that's why there's that process of hanging around prospecting.
Well, it's a significant thing when you lose a member of an MC. It's like, it really is like a death in a family.
Yeah.
And so. A lot of times it's treated as such. This is why a lot of times when people leave clubs, there's, they burn their patches. There's consequences for it, right? And you have to realize is that everything has a different level of consequence for that decision. But and so when you're prospecting with a club, that's when you're basically, now it's like, okay, we're pulling the curtain back a little bit.
Yeah,
so now you can see
that's
a little bit more,
it,
right?
yeah.
So we're going to show you a little bit more about what our club is about and everything of how we operate, how we do our events, how we do our rides. You're going to learn more about riding positions because a lot of times, you'll see this a lot too, is people that are more casual riders, they've been taught ride staggered.
Yeah. And
that's how they do it in a lot of RCs, which again is fine. And MCs, we typically ride side by side. And there's reasons for that.
Yeah.
We'll get into that later. But yeah, there's all these different little protocols, and you're going to learn. Even if you've been riding with other clubs, you might learn new perspectives as far as how that club sees things in their motorcycle club community, and how they can interact with that. But you're going to learn a lot about how to do things right, how to not do things, how to, there's a lot of things you can screw up, and that happens too.
On the topic of not doing things, now, why wouldn't you want to not do things? I see. So we got a vest over here with the prospect rocker on the bottom. So now, as a prospect, you've actually are being associated with the club you're prospecting for. So now you don't want to not or do things that can get your club in trouble, and that makes you a bad prospect. Right. I mean, we all have those stories.
Oh God, we had one. This is this is so cringy. I'm almost embarrassed to even tell this story.
And preface this with stories are important because it shows why prospecting is important.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And go.
So we had a prospect. He lasted. I don't even think he lasted a month. But we had this prospect. Nice guy, just a little colored outside the lines a little bit, And so we were at a big motorcycle event. It was a party for another club. They had hundreds of people there.
Yeah.
It was one of the bigger clubs in Vegas.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so it was one of the bigger clubs, right? So they had a giant clubhouse here in Vegas, and it was beautiful. They had this wonderful place, great bunch of guys, really good club that we like a lot. And so we had a really good relationship with them. All the people that they were already at the party. We rolled in a little bit late. And so, we're walking in, and they had this giant entryway to their clubhouse, right? So we come walking in, and the guy goes, he thought he was being so clever, and he walks in, and he just, oh, God, it's so cringy. He goes, everybody, Eagle Riders are in the house. And everybody looked at him, and we're all looking at him like, what are you doing? And he's like, and he thought he was so clever, right? And we're just like, oh. And I'm not kidding you. It was like, oh my God, did I ever get the phone calls the next day? It was like, what's going on with your prospect?
and that's why it's important. So, and even going a step back further, maybe he should have hung around more to feel it out as well.
Correct. And understand too. And it's a lot of issues with that. So when you prospect a club, you're usually, depending on the club, but most MCs certainly do, they'll assign you a somebody is like to guide you along the way, right?
Sponsor, right?
Yeah. So it's the sponsor's job to make sure they don't do dumb things like that.
True,
But how would you ever predict that somebody would do something that crazy, right?
And that's when, as the club interviewing the prospect, go, you might not be fit for this job, right?
That's exactly right. And I think he lasted about, I don't even think he made it 48 hours after that.
Okay. I might have a shorter one. And again, not to rag on prospects, although that is part of the prospecting thing, because the way I always put it is, as prospecting, it should be a lesson, right?
Yeah.
How does the club work? And nothing should, there's always the hazing. There's always going to be that, but you shouldn't do it to an extent where you're insulting the person, because then why would they want to be in your club?
It's not about that.
We had a guy that was a young guy. He joined up, and I think he was in 8 months or something, maybe somewhere around there. And we have our annual, and we said, if you make it out to the annual, we'll talk further. I want to say that it was mandatory to make it to the annual.
Okay.
And so we made it there, and we knew he was going to leave a day late because he has work and stuff. And we're like, where are you? Where are you? Oh, excuses. Didn't end up making it. Whatever. So we pulled his patch. We said, unfortunately, we've been telling you this for like almost a year. It's mandatory. It's the one thing you got to get to. And so whatever. He still became a hung around us. Cool kid. And he kept saying, I want to come back around. Well, fast forward a couple years, we had our annual come up again. We're like, all right, make it to the annual. We'll talk about it. And, and there's a little bit of information I'm just leaving out.
Sure.
But so he actually makes it. And we're like, holy shit, he made it. And again, leave some information out. But so we decided, all right, let's give him a second shot. And we put his cut up with a rope on a tree, hanging down from the rope, right? And so I had one of our a member that I had sponsored. He's holding the rope, and I said, "All right, if you can get your cut, you can prospect again."
That's great.
And I can't fault him too much because he had been drinking, but that's part of prospecting too. Some clubs don't even allow you to prospects to drink.
Right.
But how do you handle your liquor? That's important. Because if you're a member and you're an idiot, that could be a problem.
One of the things we actually do with our prospects is, as they're kind of nearing the end of their prospecting career, we take them out and get them drunk one night.
Yeah.
Intentionally, just to get, and they know it, and they know that's why we're taking them out.
I've always thought that. I get the rule not to have allow them to have alcohol, but I think that you should know how they are drunk beforehand.
Agreed.
Because they can open their mouth, and if they don't drink, then whatever,
Yeah, right.
But
there's other ways of doing it.
So to quick to or make the story go by faster. So I told him, get it and you can have your patch or your cut for now. And he was getting rocks, stacking round boulders on top of each other, trying to get up this thing. And I'm like, dude, you're not getting it. And I drilled this into him the first time. Like, everything's a lesson.
Yeah.
Like it's not just to be a dick to you. You've got to like think outside the box. And finally, I had to basically tell him. He looks over at our other member and just goes, "Here, give me the rope." And then, here comes the cut. That's all he had to do. Think outside the freaking box.
Right.
And anyways, long story short, he made a fool of himself that night. Thought he was all, I got my cut. I'm a prospect. And
right.
He literally got it taken away. I think it was like 3 hours later, and then never will get it back. So
well, and there's a million of these, right? So like we have, and on the other side, sometimes people prove themselves in weird ways.
Yeah.
We've got a prospect who. We do a pig roast we do two pig roasts every year, and usually at one of them it's much larger. I mean, we actually really roast a pig. We go out, we've got a 200+ pound pig.
Yeah.
We get this giant roaster which needs babysitting all day, and it's a whole ordeal, right? But it's really cool, and the clubs that come over, it's a great thing. Our guy in our club, Scorch, I call him our celebrity chef, right? Our club's been on a couple reality shows, so I kind of tease him. He's like our celebrity chef, but he's in charge of that, and he does an amazing job. And so, our club, we joke a lot that like we're really kind of like a bunch of foodies that ride motorcycles because we love
you guys
to cook.
Always have good food.
We always cook,
yeah.
right? So we did this huge pig roast, right? And we were this time we were smoking. We were kind of downscaling it a bit, and we had a whole bunch of smokers and we're making like all kinds of cool stuff, ribs and pig butts and everything. And so at the end of the whole thing. Our prospect, we didn't even have to tell him, didn't ask. He's out there scrubbing,
that's a good prospect,
the insides of barrels and stuff like this that we were using for smoking, for barbecuing, and everything like this. And I mean, and it was crappy work. I mean, it really, truly, it was a lousy job to do. But he jumps right in and he did it, and so sometimes people get it, right? Sometimes people don't always get it.
And that again is the point of prospecting. I think we're really diving into just what prospecting is, but it's to show that you actually want to do this.
Well, you gave me a great story one time because like I've known clubs that have done things where it's more hazy, like hey, we're all thirsty, go ride 500 miles and get a 6-pack of beer, right? It's kind of that stuff. Yeah. And that's all cool.
Yeah, it happens, but it's also about the dedication.
Right, but you told me a great story once, and I always remembered this because I like it a lot. And that I'll let you tell the story, but it had to do with why you have prospect clean bikes. And and it's a great way to frame this in, right? So
so I had sponsored this one, and he had always talked about, I have this great bike cleaning kit. He had a special pressure washer or something, special chemicals and all this. And he always talked about it like nonstop. He's like, I'll wash your bike. So one day I was going to go on a big ride. I think it was me and the old lady. We were, going out to Arizona. I was like, I didn't even get my bike washed. And he was clear across town. I'm on the west side. He was literally on the east side, like literally across town. I'm like, all right, I'm going to ride across town. Hold him to it. I called him up and said, hey, you around? I need my bike washed. You've talked about it. Oh, yeah. I got to go get the pressure washer, blah, 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 And I'm like, okay, cool. So it takes me, I would say, 45 minutes to get across town, at least that. Yeah. I get there. He's late. He doesn't have the pressure washer, doesn't have the proper chemicals. And I'm like, dude, what the heck? You've been talking about this whole time.
Yeah.
And basically I had to tell him, like, this isn't about me wanting my bike washed. I can wash my bike. I can, whatever. It's about, like, did you follow through? You've been talking about it for a long time. So obviously you're not a follow-through guy. You're not going to keep your promises and a bunch of other things. So it was like a test. And that will tell how they will act as a member going forward.
Correct.
So
and to clarify, it had nothing to do with you cleaning your bike.
No,
right?
no.
It really did. That's not the point.
Yeah.
Right? And so what happens is that once you've gone through the prospecting phase and you kind of look back at all these things, and you're right, everything is a lesson, right?
Yeah.
Is once you go back and you kind of rewind the last 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever in your head, all the time that you were prospecting, all of these things start to come together, and you go, I get it now.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's been many times where when I became a member where I go, oh, that's why I did that, or I kind of like understand like the process now because of where it took me.
Right.
So hang around, prospect the stages, and then you become a fully patched member, hopefully, right? So that's the process, right? So I'm not sure how much we should dive into that aspect of it.
We'll do that in another video, but yeah, because there's like a whole video we're going to do about background checks of prospects because we learned that the hard way, and all of that. But yeah, and then again, it's kind of like with RCs, patches are generally purchased, whereas MCs are generally earned. It's not always like that way, but usually that's that way.
Yeah, and if you've watched Sons of Anarchy, I still say like I talked in a previous video about it was we were talking about it earlier about one of our hangarounds and how he's kind of green, and I'd asked if he had never ever seen Sons of Anarchy, and he said no, and I was really surprised.
Yeah,
which is good and bad, but I honestly still think like something like that. That's where a lot of like the clubs during Sons of Anarchy, a lot of clubs popped up because everyone wanted to be it, right?
Right.
It still has a framework, an idea, and any of those like movie shows, Hollywood sensationalizes them, but it gives you that framework of like, oh, you have to prospect. Okay, so maybe in Sons of Anarchy, they're making them wash the bike, or what is that one episode? They take the deer head out of the car or something like that. Yeah. It may not be that extreme, but it's about that commitment. That's the point of it. It's not to be.
Well, Sons of Anarchy, it was all about, okay, go out and kill a bunch of people.
Well, yeah. There's a whole
that's a whole other conversation, right?
It's purely entertainment.
Yeah.
Sons of Anarchy is not how the world works. Okay? Purely entertainment.
Well, there were some elements to that show that were kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, that's kind of cool.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they had the framework,
Yeah, they obviously researched the culture a little bit, but the fact that, they're all riding around with white tennis shoes all the time, I always thought was kind of funny.
And then now it's the trend, right?
Right, yeah.
So
times change,
so that's the process. Hang around, prospecting, and once it's voted on, you become a fully patched member. And every club has a different period of all of this, how long you do it for. It's just inquiring with
and even a voting process. It generally you are voted in. I mean, it's usually by the members. They have to all, and again, it's all how it's set up in the bylaws of that club. But generally, every club's got to vote it in. Usually it's the officers say yes, and then they put it in front of the club. Mm-hmm. Sponsors got to do their part and whatnot. But the sponsor plays a very important part of this whole thing because they're the ones that are going to guide the prospect through the whole process.
Maybe almost touch on it because that's also another topic. But sponsors important because they guide, like how I was sponsoring that one guy and talking about the washing the bike and stuff. Like it's all part of that guide. Like I want him to succeed. I don't want him to fail. Why would I bother my time? So it's like guiding him and giving him the answers that he needs to be better.
Well, and they'll usually be the point of contact for the prospect. So when the prospect has a question, if it's not a personnel issue or a protocol issue where maybe the sergeant at arms needs to get involved with. But generally, they're going to go right to their sponsor and they're going to say, hey, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? And, the sponsors, they're not just to, you're screwing this all up. It's there to give them encouragement too, because, it's a positive reinforcement works just as good, if not better than negative, right? So, but it is a learning process. And so that's why you have sponsors for this.
And again, humbling yourself during those periods because the club's not going to waste their time on you and want you to fail. Right. They want you to succeed. Why would they have you come in as a hang-around prospect and whatever? Right. They want you to succeed. They want you to be a member. So don't think of your way is the only way and they're being mean to me and whatever. It's all part of the process. Yeah. And you'll get your chance to do it to the next person.
That's very true. That is very true. And it's not about payback.
Yeah, I was going to say on a quick note about that too, when members are kind of being jerks and there's no lesson involved in it, that's also something for you to consider as a prospect. Like, okay, now these guys are just they're not who I'm thinking they are in a way because they're doing stuff just to be fun and be a dick. Like, is that who you want to be a member with? That's another part of it too.
That's all true.
So, but I guess that's the process. Hang around, prospect, and patch member once you're voted in.
So cool. Thanks a lot for watching this video. We hope you learned a little bit. And please be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. That helps us kind of keep the channel going. And we'll do our traditional shot at the end of our video.
I always forget that.
Oh, man.
So focused.
Cheers, yeah. All right. And keep the shiny side up. We'll see you on the next video.
All right. Peace.